guys? Let's get into it. So today we got a question, and what's it really like in audit? This is a really long question, so I'm going to kind of break this down, and hopefully it answers a lot of your guys' questions at the same time. So what's it really like in audit? Can you talk about a day in the life of an auditor? Sure. I mean, okay, so a day in the life of the auditor, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm already working on making a vlog where I can show you guys exactly how my day-to-day is, and it's going to be an actual day where, I'm actually working, where I'm doing certain things, like not just, showing you me grabbing coffee and, how perfect this is. No, I'm going to show you everything about how stressful it is sometimes, how difficult it is to deal with certain things that pop up. So anyways, that'll come up in a different video. But what's it like in a day in the life of an auditor? I mean, so it's a very nuanced question, and I'll answer it in this way. It depends on what level you are. Your life as an audit associate is much, much, much different than your life as a senior manager like myself. Very, very different world. But, as you guys are going to be, a lot of you guys are kind of young in your career still. I'll walk you through like an audit associate's day. And typically what ends up happening, and I'll walk you through a day when you're actually working on client work and you're assigned to a client. What I mean by that is so when you're in professional services and you work for a public accounting firm, you have a schedule, right? Or typically your firm will have some software that lays out your entire calendar literally for like the next 6 months. Again, I'm speaking just audit. Depending on if you do consulting or whatever, it may be different. But for audit associates, it's the way it gets set up is that typically audits are kind of scheduled, 3, 6, a year in advance, right? Like we already know what days we're going to be out there. We know what months we're going to be auditing them and so on and so forth. So let's say you get put on I'm just going to throw names out there, right? Let's say you're on the Costco audit, or you're auditing Amazon or whatever, right? Or you're auditing some company, Joe Schmo CPA, right? You're auditing this company, and then typically what ends up happening is the managers, the senior managers, a partner will line up the calendars with the client team. They'll say, hey, we need to schedule the audit from this day to this day, right? And after the audit's scheduled, they start assigning, associates, seniors, and all that stuff. Usually you want the same team that was on it last year, but maybe you have a new team. And obviously, since you're a new audit associate, you're going to be put on, different engagements during the year. So when you're on an engagement or when you're scheduled to be on an audit, because sometimes we call it you're unassigned, that means you're not scheduled to any job. You're not scheduled on an audit. And it does happen. There is downtime sometimes, right? When you're literally not scheduled on anything for the day. Typically, that happens more often in your first year. Again, at my level, I'm always doing something, right? So, but let's say you're an audit associate and you're scheduled on a job. Typically, I think the first thing you should do when you open up your laptop, check your email. Make sure that, there's nothing super pending from last night, or you didn't get an email that's just like dumpster fire. You need to get to it now. So I would check your email, and then you see, okay, I always make sure that, I plan my week the Sunday in advance. But if you're just starting out, it's difficult to do that, right? Because maybe you don't really know what the heck you're supposed to do anyways, right? So that's okay. Typically, you open up your laptop, check your email, make sure, everything's good to go for the day. And then you check in with your senior. And then you're like, hey, senior, what would you like me to work on today? And they will typically, let's say you're working on cash, right? If you haven't watched my cash video, make sure you watch that. It'll show you actually how to audit cash. So let's say you're auditing cash, right? And now you're going to he's going to walk you through, okay, this is how to go through the steps of how to audit cash. And you're literally going to go throughout the day. And maybe you need to contact your client. Maybe you have a client call to update them on how the status of the audit is going at 1 o'clock. So let's say in the morning, again, you open up your laptop, check your email. Now you're assigned to cash. Your senior walks you through the steps you need to take for the next 3 hours. Now it's lunchtime. Typically, people take a lunch, so you have lunch. Then it's 1 o'clock. But let's say you check your calendar, and at 1 o'clock, you have a call with the client team to update them on how the audit's going or whatever, right? Typically, your senior or the manager will lead the call with the client to let them know, hey, we sent selections for this. This is the status of that, and so on and so forth. And then you continue doing your cash audit the next 2 hours or whatever. And then let's say 3 to 3:30, you have an internal meeting with the audit team to let everyone know, hey, maybe you're working remote and no one really knows where anyone's at. So at 3:30 to 4 o'clock every day, you check in with your team and they ask, what's the status of the audit, of the cash audit? How's it going? Do you have any adjustments? Do you have any variances? Do you have anything you need to fall back to with a client? So on and so forth. And that's pretty, I hate to make it sound so boring, but sometimes that's what it is, right? It's really, you need to get the work done, especially if you're assigned assigned to an audit, that's what you're going to be doing. But again, maybe there's a nice, rooftop happy hour at 6 o'clock that you as a team need to be at. If hopefully the client needs aren't, the deadline isn't tomorrow, then maybe you can go to that and there's a nice dinner or whatever, right? Every day is going to be a little bit different, but for the most part, that's pretty much how the day of a life of an auditor is, right? It's doing your test work, it's communicating with the client, it's communicating with your audit teams, it's making sure that everyone is doing a good job, it's making sure that the whatever you're assigned to do is running smoothly, it's keeping up with any administrative work. It's a lot of different hats you need to wear, but at the same time, it's very fast paced, and you need to make sure that hey, it's a very deadline focused job. So you need to make sure that everything's going in the right direction and you keep your team updated. And as you're completing your test work, you're also learning how to account for these different balances and throughout this whole process. And like I said, maybe there's something going on in the afternoon or the evening that's like a little more, fun per se. Then you go do that, right? But every day is going to be a slightly different. No day is going to be exactly the same. Maybe you audited cash and it's an absolute mess and you need to jump on a call with the client for like 2 hours to hash it out and go through them and make sure you understand what's going on. It could happen. So every day is going to be a little different, but for the most part, your senior, especially your first year, is going to dictate how your day looks like, what you're assigned to do, what you need to do. And then if there's anything that you need to do outside of, client work, that whether it's admin work or something for the firm, just make sure you keep everyone up to date as to what you're doing. Okay, and then second question, we learn all about it in school, but how does it apply to the job? Okay, so, as far as what you learn in school from an accounting perspective, I think I can't repeat this enough, if you can master debits and credits, I think that is the critical factor to becoming a great auditor. If you don't have a good baseline foundation of a master in accounting, just debits on the left, credits on the right, you know how to account for different transactions, you need to leave college. Your goal is to leave college having a baseline foundation of accounting. Your intermediate accounting classes are the most critical classes in your accounting career as a college student, because when you start working, you're going to be expected to have a certain baseline level foundation understanding of accounting. Again, if I ask you, what a debit and credit is, if you've never heard those words before, you're in big trouble, right? So hopefully all you guys are going to graduate with your accounting degree if you're going into audit anyways. So the biggest thing for you in college is to learn basic fundamental debit and credit financial statement analysis so you can go into work knowing at least a baseline level and you have something to build on. Again, I don't expect you to be a master. I don't expect you to be a wizard, and I don't expect you to know everything, but I expect you to be a master of the basic fundamental understanding that debits on the left, credits on the right. Literally, if you can know that, I promise you're going to be okay. You just need a basic level understanding of accounting. So can you detail out what it's like starting out in audit? In auditing, were you an apprentice for a while or were you thrown into it? Your first year is you're kind of, I don't want to say like you're babied through it, right? But they do kind of hold your hand through it your first year. They do give you a little bit of grace, especially if your first 2-3 months and your first audit, you're definitely going to be giving some grace period where, you're able to ask questions and talk through with your seniors. But the worst thing you can do is, ask the same question 5 times or not pay attention when they're walking you through something. But, your first year, you are going to be expected to be a professional, show up on time, basic things like that. But when it comes to the actual technical ability, I think if you can show and demonstrate that you have a basic understanding of accounting and you actually understand, the terms, I think the audit portion, it just comes with time. I always say this, accounting is black and white, but audit is an art. It really is. There's so many different ways to approach so many different things and get comfortable with things. So your first year, you're not going to necessarily be thrown into it, but sometimes unfortunately you do have seniors that expect you to be a little bit more independent, and that's okay sometimes. But if you're completely lost and you don't know what you're doing, I always think it's better to ask, because the worst thing you can do is get assigned some work and sit on it for 5 hours not knowing what the heck you're doing, and then you just tell your senior, well, I just billed 5 hours to the client, but I don't really know what I'm doing. You don't do that. Worst thing you can do, try to figure it out for an hour. If you are just spinning your wheels, then you have to ask a question to your senior, and hopefully they are nice enough and they want to mentor you and coach you through the process. But let them know you need to come at it with a professional. You can't just ask a question saying, well, I don't know how to do this. It's like, okay, what don't you know how to do? What part of the portion where I walked you through isn't making sense? What isn't making sense? Pose questions. Be a professional. That's your job now. Don't just come and say, well, I don't know how to do this, so I can't do it. No, you need to understand why you aren't understanding it. What are you aren't understanding? Is it the account balance? Is it the assertions? Is it the approach? Have a detailed plan as to what you want to ask your senior so they can answer the right questions to get you on the right path. Did they expect you as a new hire to find internal control issues right away, or have you conduct client interviews? I mean, as far as finding, internal control issues, I wouldn't say you're expected to know that, but it's good for you to start learning what these things are, when you're doing your walkthroughs and certain things. But have you conduct client interviews? I will say this. I was expected to conduct client interviews like my first week, literally. It is very scary and it is very intimidating, but I think if you can at least prepare in advance. And, they're not just going to say, you're not just going to show up one day and they're going to say, hey, Bryan, you're going to go ask the client about this really technical stuff that I don't even know about. No, obviously they're going to say, hey, Bryan, you're going to be assigned to do, the cash and AR walkthrough or whatever. And, and the client interview or the client meeting is next Wednesday, right? And you have 2 days to prepare. Well, before that meeting, I would look at maybe last year's work, or I would even ask my senior, hey, what's the best way to prepare for this meeting? I want to make sure I'm knowledgeable. I want to make sure I'm a professional. I want to make sure I'm not asking dumb questions. And believe me, it's still going to be very intimidating no matter how much you prep. But you prepping, at least your client knows and can see that you prepared for this, right? You're doing the best you can. And that's all you can do your first year is do the best you can. I promise you guys, if you're putting your best foot forward, if you're trying, if you're diligent, if you're a professional, things are going to go very, very well for you your first year. So yes, you are going to be expected to conduct client interviews, but it's not going to be on things that you have absolutely no clue about, or, hopefully they don't just like throw you in there and say, hey, go ask the client this. You might need to go ask, hey, client, I need a copy of this check, or hey, client, can you walk me through this? But hopefully you prepare enough before the interview, and this will get you in the mindset of, before you do a presentation, before you meet with certain people, you need to prepare. Be a professional about everything. And lastly, this is not me being anxious, but I may be looking at a starting assurance advisory position soon as a new college grad and have no idea what to expect. I think it's totally nervous. I think it's totally normal. I think it's totally okay to be nervous. I get it. I was there too. I had no idea what to expect. Hopefully through you subscribing to this channel, I give you a little bit of glimpse into what it's really like being an audit associate or being, at a public accounting firm. All I can tell you guys is all I expect from from people that come into the firm in general is just be a professional. That's it. It's just you're not a student anymore. You're a professional. Act like it, dress like it, move like it, talk like it. You need to work like it as well. And by that, I mean you need to prepare. If you don't know how to do something, ask a question, but ask the right question. Prepare for it. Don't just, I hate to say, don't be lazy about it, right? I mean, if you go conduct a client interview, you have no idea what you're saying. Let your senior know beforehand and say, hey, I'm a little bit confused on this topic. Maybe we can move the meeting to the next day, or just make sure you're prepared in advance. And again, I think it's totally normal to be nervous and scared. I think it's a new chapter in your life and it's going to be very, very intimidating, but you're not going to grow if you're not challenged. And it's one thing, and that's one reason why I've stayed in public accounting as long as I have, is that I'm constantly challenged. I'm constantly put in a position where I need to question my own beliefs about certain things where, I thought it was one way, but maybe I need to account for it this way, or, hey, maybe this is a better approach, or maybe I should manage my team a little better this way. I am constantly challenged with new clients, new goals. And, even myself sometimes 8 years in, I'm still, intimidated sometimes to go talk to certain people, but that's normal. It's totally normal. And again, if you did, I think you were weird if you didn't feel that, right? Because it's totally normal to be like that. You're a student and it's a whole new chapter in your life. But I think if you can take on the approach of you're a professional now, act like it, be like it, dress like it, work like it, I think you have nothing to worry about. And if you actually learn the basic skills of whatever it is and you need to do what you need to do at work, if you have a basic understanding, just basic fundamental, and you can build on that, because the best training ground that you're going to learn is on the job, bar none. So hopefully that video was helpful. Hopefully you were able to calm some nerves after watching this video. If you guys have any other questions, make sure to leave me a comment below. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to smash the like button below for the YouTube algorithm. Till next time, work hard, dress well. Peace.